Let's see, words like dynasty used and power. And I don't know exactly how people use those words, but we're just regular people.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Can I be honest? Randy makes me feel uncomfortable. His exclusive interview with the New York Times is basically here's me putting my cards on the table. I'm trustworthy. I'm the good son. I'm the decent Murdaugh. Let's face it, Randy's face was one of several family members hovering over Alex Murdaugh's shoulder on his side of the courtroom in support over, 6 weeks. If Randy supported his brother during the trial, his support, unlike John's, Alex's younger brother, his support was tacit. Randy didn't testify. John did. Buster testified. Randy didn't. But Randy and John were both up and running on Good Morning America within days of the Murdaugh murders, extending credibility to their wayward brother.
He's a very caring person, and she was the rock of their family.
Do you think Alex Murdaugh was a caring person if he betrayed his wife and son and housekeeper and the law firm that he worked for, betrayed his best friends, betrayed his colleagues, betrayed his clients? Now that Alex Murdaugh's been convicted both in court and in the court of public opinion, his brother Randy seems to want to defend Randy, right? We heard that Alex cares the most about Alex. Does that sort of attitude run in the family? Anyway, Randy's interview with the New York Times seems to be about distancing himself from his brother. We're not similar. We haven't spoken in months. He's a liar. I'm honest. I'm an honest Murdaugh. In his interview with the New York Times, he basically says, listen, I'm not him. And yet Randy's taken over Alex's clients. And he kind of says he's not his brother's keeper. Knowing what we know about Alex, what do we make of this? What should we make of this? Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button if you're enjoying this episode. And let's get started. So to quote from the New York Times, he said that even in college, it was clear how different the brothers were, how different Alex and Randy were at college. Alex was on the football team, and I think that's where he got a knee injury, and he was also a regular at college parties. And I suppose Randy's trying to say, well, he wasn't on the football team because they were so different, and I guess he wasn't a regular at college parties. Randy describes himself as a hometown boy who would go back home to Hampton every weekend to hunt and fish, presumably during the college days. Well, the hunting and fishing thing is certainly something he seems to have in common with his brother. So, I mean, think about that. They were so different that they're practically neighbors in the small town. Both have got hunting lodges. Both studied at the same university. Both studied and worked in the same area. Both worked for the same law firm. In fact, their offices were so close to one another, Randy could often overhear Alex's conversations. In other words,
same, but different,
as they say in Thailand. Now, as if to prove, to demonstrate, to show just how unlike his lawyer brother Randy is, here's Randy, a lawyer, not wearing a lawyerly suit and tie, posing in a t-shirt next to a pile of wood. I mean, doesn't this just show how different he is to Alex? Doesn't it show that he's just regular people?
But maybe I was born to be a regular person and have a regular life.
Is that who he is? Is he a regular person? Well, he actually has an office right next to Alex Murdaugh, so how is that regular? According to the New York Times, quote, in recent years, and those three words should be underlined, in recent years, their offices were close enough that Randy could actually hear his brother's constant phone calls, but they rarely spent any time together. Oh, okay, so let that sink in for a minute. In recent years, right, so they didn't speak to each other in the hall or one another's offices. And if they did hang out, did they never do so alone? Because if they did, what could they have spoken about? The article goes on to say, it's not like there was some problem with our relationship necessarily. We just really weren't alike, so we didn't do stuff together. Now, it's strange that that disclosure comes out post-verdict. It's also a little peculiar, the, wow, I did not know that insights we're getting from Randy. So he says, for example, quote, in the first interview a family member's given since the trial, Randy Murdaugh said he had no doubt that his brother was a serial liar and a thief. Well, no one else has any doubt about that either, especially after Alex took the stand and said over and over and over again that he didn't dispute stealing from this client and didn't dispute stealing from that one, didn't dispute lying about this, didn't dispute lying about that.
Did you lie to SLED Agent Owen and Deputy Laura Rutland on the night of June 7th and told them that you stayed at the house after dinner?
I did lie to them.
Did you lie to Agent Owen and Agent Croft on the follow-up interview on June 10th that the last time you saw Maggie and Paul was at dinner?
I did lie to them.
Did you continue lying after that night? Did you not?
But once I lied, I continued to lie. Yes, sir.
Why?
You know, oh, what a tangled web we weave. But once I told a lie, then I told my family, I had to keep lying.
So answer the question, please.
What I admit is that I misled them, I did wrong, and that I stole their money.
During the Murdaugh trial, the strategy ultimately was to first pretend that he wasn't near the kennels until he couldn't pretend anymore. And then he said, okay, I lied. I was at the kennels. I lied about this, that, and the next thing, but I'm telling you the truth about this, that I didn't kill Paul and Maggie. You're kind of getting the same thing from Randy, that it's true that he lied about everything, this, that, and the next thing, but he didn't kill Paul and Maggie. It's exactly the same defense argument, right? Because in the New York Times, Randy said he believed that Alex had not told the whole truth about what he knew about the killings, but that he found it impossible to picture Alex as the perpetrator. And so when Alex's brother says, you know what, I don't think he told the truth about the killings, you kind of go, no shit. But where it really gets interesting is, although Randy is nothing like Alex, and although he thinks Alex has been a bad brother, murder, well, that's taking things too far. So it's basically a double hand-wringing exercise in the New York Times. I'm not my brother's keeper. I'm not in my brother's corner. Just because he's my brother and I've got nothing to do with him and he has nothing to do with me. But actually what? Well, when he's asked directly whether he thought Alex carried out the murders, then there's hedging. Then he says, well, I don't know. Didn't you sit in the trial for 6 weeks? As a lawyer, he said he respects the jury's verdict, but, and then there's a but he finds it impossible to picture Alex, a man he's known for decades, as a protective husband and father, pulling the trigger and inflicting the carnage that prosecutors described. Strange, I don't find it hard to picture it. And if Paul had a Timmy side to him, perhaps Alex had a Tommy side to him. In short, when Randy gave his 2-hour exclusive to the New York Times, while casting himself in the humanizing light of an ordinary fella stacking wood, in short, he was basically saying, it's complicated. It's strange because the jury seemed to think it was really simple, and that the video basically made things real simple really quickly. Oddly, while those watching the trial seemed to come away from the trial with certain impressions reinforced, with this idea of a liar also lying on the stand, right? Such as what an incredibly terrible witness Alex actually was. Randy seemed to come away from the trial with a completely different view. And he told the New York Times after 6 weeks of trial, they came away more convinced that he did not do this, meaning Alex's lawyers. Interestingly, Buster and John were called to testify, but not Randy. And this is the moment of truth in this analysis. So Buster and John are called to testify, not Randy. Why not Randy? And you might say, well, I accept Randy's reasons at face value. Why didn't he testify? Well, according to the New York Times, because he thinks it is possible that no one put him on the stand because what he thought didn't align perfectly with either side. It's possible.
It's possible. Why don't you go find out? It's getting dark out there. Yes.
Do you want to know what I think? I think if Randy testified, Waters would test Randy's relationship at the firm and at the scene with Alex. Did you know that Randy was the first brother at the scene? He was there within 15 minutes of being called. That gives you an idea of just how close Randy lives to Murdaugh. In a very real sense, if Randy testified, I think that may have put Randy on trial as well. I think it speaks volumes that Buster testified, John testified, but the brother that was also a lawyer, right? The brother that called Sandy Smith following Stephen Smith's death, offering to help however he could. The Murdaugh brother in the adjacent office, the only other Murdaugh brother in the adjacent office, didn't testify. Now, one could imagine if he did testify, wouldn't Waters ask him certain difficult questions such as, what was that call to Sandy Smith all about? It's also interesting that Alex's theory for all the supposed discord and disagreement is the exact same theory Randy has been pushing. According to the New York Times, quote, in the weeks after the murders, the family mobilized to support Alex, grieving alongside him, as he suggested that Paul must have been targeted over his involvement in a fatal boat crash in 2019, a theory that Alex Murdaugh continued to push during the trial. In June 2021, just 10 days after the murders, Randy made a bold statement on Good Morning America. He said, my brother loved Maggie and Paul like nothing else on this earth, just like he loves Buster. So there's no possible way he could have anything to do with this, I can assure you. And yet here we are, not assured of anything. And so that's why I feel kind of uncomfortable. In that same interview, he also refers to this idea of threats against Paul. You know, basically trying to open the door to the same version of events that came out at trial, that this was revenge for the boating incident. Not only do we not feel assured, how sure are we about what the other Murdaugh brother says? Is it Cain and Abel, and the one brother is good and the other is bad? In June 2021, Randy also made this dubious claim. He said, quote, we are part of the community. We are no different than anybody else. We've just been here as attorneys for a long time in our family. In other words,
Same, but different.
So to be clear, in that interview with Good Morning America, the following was part of the article that came out of that. Quote, since the wreck, Paul had been receiving online threats from strangers that were bothersome but weren't believed to be credible, according to Randy and John. The two brothers recalled how smitten Alex was from the moment he met Maggie and how he truly doted on her, end quote. Really? Was Alex smitten with Maggie at the time of the murders? Was Alex doting on Maggie while they lived apart and while she was possibly, seeing and talking to divorce lawyers? But the part that for me rings the most hollow is this whole thing of him saying, I see words like dynasty and power, but we're just regular people that are working hard and trying to do right. Why must a lawyer try to do right? Surely you just obey the law and enforce the law. What's this business about trying to do right? Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.